Good morning. I'm Nick Potter, Director of Community Relations and Development for the Pueblo City County Library District. Welcome to our public author presentation as part of All Pueblo Reads. This year's All Pueblo Reads is especially exciting because we featured a cookbook as part of our community read. It is my pleasure to welcome you this morning. I welcome you today as we broadcast live from East High School and host you virtually from their culinary arts kitchen. I would like to introduce our very special guest co-host today, Miss Andrea Aragon.
Hello, I am so excited to be a part of the 2021 brunch. Thank you so much for having me, Nick.
Andrea, thank you so much for being here and joining us this morning as we prepare brunch. Andrea is the Executive Director of the Robert Hoag Rawlings Foundation. She has over 25 years of experience in the nonprofit sector through various leadership roles. Prior to the Rawlings Foundation, Andrea was the president and CEO at United Way of Pueblo County. She's a trustee for the El Pomar Foundation, a commissioner for the Pueblo Housing Authority, and most importantly of all, a member of the Pueblo Library Foundation. We are so happy to have her here today.
Well, I really am so excited to co-host this event, and I'm really ready to cook with Chef Ottolenghi. I think this is going to be really, really fun, especially because I'm not really a cook at all. So I know I'm going to learn a lot.
I think today's event is going to be a ton of fun. We get to cook alongside with a world-renowned chef, and we've designed a virtual event that should be simple to access and easy to interact with. Now that you're within the live events and have begun playing the live events, here are a few things so that you can view and enjoy today's program. You can pause the live program at any point in the event. Just click the pause icon. We have asked for pre-submitted questions, and we will answer all pre-submitted questions at the end of this program.
Now, be sure to have your ingredients ready as we cook alongside Chef Ottolenghi.
Today, we will celebrate literacy and lifelong learning. The Book Lovers Brunch and the author and chef presentation is a culmination of events as part of All Pueblo Reads. This year's All Pueblo Reads was completely virtual and for the first time ever featured a cookbook. The mission of All Pueblo Reads is to get everyone in Pueblo County reading and discussing one book at the same time. 2021 selection is Yotam Ottolenghi's Flavor, a cookbook by Mr. Yotam Ottolenghi. Mr. Ottolenghi is joining us today from his home in London so we can cook live with him and learn about the vision behind his book.
Cooking alongside Nick and I are the students of East High School's Pro-Start class with their teacher, Miss Pasalacqua, or Miss Pass, as she is affectionately known. These future culinary superstars have been cooking recipes from the cookbook Flavor throughout the month and have enjoyed Mr. Ottolenghi's plant-based recipes. Miss Pass and all Pro-Start students, welcome to today's program. I hear that by cooking their way through this cookbook, that they have discovered the recipe they are going to cook at their state competition. That's pretty cool and exciting.
It's so cool and exciting, and I think that they're going to do a plant-based recipe, which I think is just such a cool result of this program. This event is the premier event for the All Pueblo Reads project. This program is made possible because of library supporters and our generous All Pueblo Reads sponsors. Allow me to thank the generous individuals and businesses that supported the 2021 All Pueblo Reads project and the Book Lovers Black Apron Brunch. At the diamond level, Friends of the Pueblo Library and the Books Again bookstore. H.W. Houston Construction. At the platinum level, Black Hills Energy, Big Bear Wine and Liquor. At the gold level, Bank of the San Juans. And sponsors at the silver level include Anderson Mason Dell Architects, Ent Federal Credit Union, Benefits Broker, Legacy Bank, Angelus Chapel Mortuaries. And sponsors at the bronze level include Security Service Investment Group, Hub International, Mr. Bart Miller, Credit Union of Colorado, Royal Electrical Services, and Wilcoxon Wealth Management.
Thank you to our generous sponsors. You have already made this event a great success. And those folks are the ones that are supporting so many different activities and events. We really salute you.
We could not do this program without them. Thank you so much for your support. Today we are here to celebrate the Pueblo City County Library District. Our library district has been led by Mr. John Walker for 17 years. John is the executive director of PCCLD and has led the library district to greatness on a local and national level. Pueblo Library is a vital community resource, and we can all be proud of the leadership that John provides to the library district in directing this community resource that means so much to so many. I would now like to welcome John to the virtual stage.
Good morning. My name is John Walker. It's my honor to serve as the executive director for the Pueblo City County Library. I want to welcome you to this year's All Pueblo Reads featured program. It's my privilege to be with you for today's very special event, and I want to thank you for being here. I'd like to take an opportunity now to provide you with a brief update on the state of your Pueblo City County Library. The library is known nationally as a high-achieving public library. The Pueblo City County Library District was awarded the National Medal for Museum and Library Services just a few years ago. Among librarians, this national award is cherished, and I'm very proud that Pueblo is one of the few communities to ever receive this medal. More recently, in 2020, we were selected as a National 5-Star Library. This designation places Pueblo City County libraries in the top 1% of the nearly 6,000 public libraries from throughout the United States, and this is based upon key performance measures. This means the use of our local libraries compare favorably with libraries everywhere, all across the country. I'm pleased that Pueblo libraries are viewed so positively. This is an accolade for the institution, but it also says a lot about our community. I hope and trust that you feel the same. These recognitions make us confident in saying that we have delivered on our responsibility to provide the best possible library service for our community. And there's more. Our local community voted Pueblo City County Library as America's Best Library in 2018. And Pueblo County voters later voted yes, and that was at the polls in November of 2019, to provide ongoing tax funding necessary to help our local libraries continue to thrive. Pueblo City County Libraries have a long-range capital facilities and operation plan that this successful 2019 election helps ensure that we can achieve. As a result of the successful election, Pueblo libraries have adopted a capital facilities plan to renovate and improve all the libraries throughout the county. And this will happen over the next several years so that we can continue to provide great physical spaces for delivering library services to the members of the community. In addition, ballot measure 6B helps make sure that there are sufficient funds available to support PCCLD operations now and into the future. This includes paying for ongoing costs like library personnel, buying new books and other library materials, and paying for library programs and services, upkeep for library facilities and our information technology, maintenance, and other operational costs. Not too long ago, we were able to carefully study the longer-term future of our local libraries. This has included public and stakeholder input, and the results of this work is a new long-range strategic plan to help ensure we continue to provide our community with the best possible public library service. We're busy working to implement this plan now, so we continue to be a high-achieving institution. There are a few other important activities that are on our radar screen right now. This includes, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has shadowed all of our work, starting in March of 2020 and continuing through today. I'm pleased with Pueblo Library's overall response to this very difficult situation that's resulted in so much stress and difficulty in our community. Our COVID-19 reopening planning at the library has been thorough, and this has helped make sure that our institution remains strong. And Pueblo libraries have been hosting vaccination clinics at all local libraries in recent months, and this shows how our institution can be flexible to help in unexpected ways. And while I'm pleased with our response to date to the many challenges presented to us by the pandemic, this public health crisis will continue to impact PCCLD well into 2022. Another important recent development is Reading Pays, Pueblo's $1 million reading challenge. Reading Pays has helped re-engage the library positively with the community this past year, even as everyone continued to feel the negative consequences of COVID-19. I very much appreciate the willingness of library supporters in recent months to pivot to Reading Pays and take advantage of this opportunity. The response from the community to Reading Pays has been overwhelmingly positive. Thousands of local young people completed the program, and more than $7,000 has been paid out so far for this program. Reading Pays both help stimulate reading achievement among our local youth and put money into the local economy. Reading Pays would not have occurred without both the City of Pueblo and Pueblo County joining together to invest certain federal COVID-19 recovery funds to help support the project. There are many indications from the mayor and others that Reading Pays may happen again next year during the summer of 2022, and we're really excited about that at the library. A third current project to highlight briefly is the Rawlings Library renovation. I'm pleased that the Rawlings Library renovation is underway right now as we speak. This construction project is on track to finish up in 2022, and it will help continue to have, and it will have an impact on PCCLD for months to come as we complete this construction project. In the end, this major capital upgrade and renovation will help ensure that this wonderful Rawlings Library, which is located in the heart of Pueblo, is well poised to serve our community as robustly in the next 20 years, just as it has in the last 20 years. And there's more. We plan to begin the design process to expand and renovate both the Barkman and Lucero libraries in 2022. These heavily used branch libraries are too small for the number of people who use them regularly. So we plan to invest in an effort to renovate and expand these two libraries, with work starting in 2022 and wrapping up later in 2023. These are only some of the many matters that will influence Pueblo City County Library's promise to deliver excellent public library services in 2022 and for years beyond. I know that you're proud of our libraries, and our goal is to ensure that we deliver on your expectation for excellent local libraries. We aim to deliver our promise to promote reading, literacy, lifelong learning, and free and open access to information for everyone. I'm going to close my comments today by expressing my sincere appreciation to you and for your support for our libraries. This also includes your support for today's event. We have a very special program planned for you today. I hope you enjoy it. And so I just want to close by thanking you for joining us. Thank you for supporting Pueblo City County Libraries. And now back to you, Nick.
Thank you, John, so much for your great words of wisdom and for providing such a great State of the Library address. We really appreciate it. Now for our featured presentation. Each year, PCCLD, through the All Pueblo Reads project, features a piece of literature and brings an author to promote dialogue and cultural, generational, and socioeconomic lines. This year is the 17th year of All Pueblo Reads. The selected book for 2021 is Ottolenghi Flavor, a cookbook by Yotam Ottolenghi. We are pleased to virtually host Mr. Ottolenghi and look forward to hearing from him and receiving insights into his award-winning cookbooks. Ottolenghi is widely beloved for his inspirational, beautiful, and award-winning cookbooks. Yet he had an unlikely beginning. In 1997, Ottolenghi completed a combined bachelor's and master's degree in comparative literature at Tel Aviv University. His thesis was on the philosophy of the photographic image. That same year, he moved to Amsterdam, where he worked at the Dutch Jewish Weekly and considered getting his doctorate at Yale. Instead, and against the advice of his father, family, and friends, he moved to London to study French cooking at Le Cordon Bleu. Soon, Ottolenghi found work as a pastry chef and eventually met the Palestinian chef Sami Tamimi. Ottolenghi and Tamimi discovered that they had grown up just a few miles apart on opposite sides of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in Jerusalem. They became friends and eventual business partners, bonding over shared language and a joint incomprehension of the traditional English food. I love that. Ottolenghi's debut cookbook, Ottolenghi, authored with Tamimi, is published in 2008. 6 more internationally best-selling volumes have followed, a collection of recipes exploring the flavors of his home city, Jerusalem, with Tamimi in 2012, and the vegetable cookbooks Plenty in 2010 and Plenty More in 2014. A cookbook from his acclaimed London restaurant, Nopi, in 2015, and a dessert cookbook, Sweet, in 2017, and Ottolenghi Simple in 2018. Ottolenghi's books have sold over 1.5 million copies in North America and 5 million copies worldwide. Ottolenghi's new book, co-written with Itza Belfresh, is Ottolenghi Flavor, our choice book for this All Pueblo Reads project. Ottolenghi's cookbooks have proven influential, with the New York Times noting that Ottolenghi's recipes are widely imitatable for their plain spoken instructions and enticing photographs. It should be noted that the photography within his books is overseen by Ottolenghi himself. In 2014, the London Evening Standard noted that Ottolenghi had radically rewritten the way Londoners cook and eat, while Bon Appetit wrote that he had made the world love vegetables. Jerusalem, the cookbook, was awarded Cookbook of the Year by the International Association of Culinary Professionals and Best International Cookbook by James Beard Foundation.
Ottolenghi's books have been named among the best books of the year by the New York Times, San Francisco Chronicle, and NPR. A documentary film, Ottolenghi and the Cakes of Versailles, directed by Laura Gabbard, was released in theaters and on demand September 25th, 2020. Yotam Ottolenghi is an instructor with the streaming platform Masterclass. Yotam Ottolenghi grew up in Israel to parents of Italian and German descent and spent childhood summers in Italy. Long based in London, where he co-owns a group of deli shops and the fine dining restaurants Nopi and Robi, Ottolenghi spends much of his time creating and testing recipes for his weekly column in The Guardian and monthly column in The New York Times. When he is not cooking, he oversees the day-to-day running of his business and makes occasional television programs. Family life with his husband and 2 young sons and Pilates are much loved distractions.
Mr. Ottolenghi, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Introduction.
During the past month, we have celebrated culture, community, family, and history, food, agriculture, and more. We are so excited to hear from you and hear your insights into your cookbook Flavor. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. This was a great introduction. And thank you for having me. I hope you can see well. This is my test kitchen here in North London in Holloway. And I'm going to start this by a quick demonstration. I've got, if it's okay with you, I'll just get it. Go ahead and start with the cooking, And once I've got everything in place and the pasta is there cooking away and bubbling away, we'll have a good 25 minutes chat where everything is getting ready. So in this pan, I've got some olive oil that's about a quarter of a cup. And to my olive oil, I'm adding these cooked chickpeas. So they come from a can. You can cook yourself, they do better, but I'm going to do this chickpeas absolutely fine with using canned chickpeas because they're cooked slowly and they'll get lots more flavor coming to them through the other ingredients. So I've got chickpeas and tomato paste. That goes into this pan. I'm also going to mince some garlic. You want quite a lot of garlic in here. Don't be scared about this amount of garlic. I've got a good 6 cloves or so, or 5 cloves. When the garlic cooks, it's going to lose its distinct flavor, and it's going to become much more, sweet and lovely for the actual final flavor profile. And I'm also adding here some ground cumin and some paprika, smoked paprika, and a bit of salt. All that goes in here. Now I'm going to stir this and allow it to cook. And I'm going to cook the tomato paste. You'll see, I'll kind of lift the pan once in a while and show you that the tomato paste will go nice and dark, and the chickpeas will crispen up a bit. And the point of what I'm doing at this moment is actually to create both chickpeas that are going to be part of the sauce that the orecchiette, the pasta, is going to be cooked in, but also a garnish. So I'm going to take a bit of those chickpeas away once they become nice and warm and crisp, and they go a bit crispy on the outside from the frying. And I'm going to keep that aside as a garnish on top, and the rest will cook with the pasta. And what I love about this dish is that it really allows you to, it's very little work. So essentially it's a 1 pot pasta, but you wouldn't know it. And I'm going to cook this orecchiette, but you can use other kinds of small, relatively small pasta, to cook straight in with everything else. So I'm not boiling the pasta and making a sauce. I'm actually making a sauce while the pasta is cooking in it, which is a lovely thing to do. And saves you washing up. You get a lot of starchiness coming to the pasta and giving the sauce nice body. So it's a great thing to do. And you want to kind of cook the chickpeas on medium-high heat for roughly 12 minutes. And this will be, then you get those kind of crispy chickpeas. While this is happening, I'm going to create another element, which would be both a garnish and cooked through. So I'll break that down again into two parts. I'll tell you in a minute, just like the chickpeas. And that's the green bit. The green bit has got olive. I love mozzarella. They're nice green Italian olives, but you can use other green olives. Some capers and lemon zest. So I've got about 40 grams of parsley here. I'm not sure how that translates into American measurements, but you can see that's a good handful. And I'm going to no, don't add that to the pan. No, don't add that to the pan. No, that's for later. I just saw someone starting to do that, but that's a bit too early. Give it a moment. And if you haven't chopped your parsley at this stage, which I haven't, just chop your parsley kind of quite fine, which is what I'm doing right now. And I'll tell you when I want this added to the pan. So give me a minute and take your time. So what I'm smelling now from here is the wonderful aroma of chickpeas frying, shallow frying in oil, and that paprika and cumin cooking away. So all those, and of course the garlic, there's lots of garlic there. So that's a wonderful thing to smell and to experience. The pan that I'm looking at the moment, I don't know whose pan it is, needs to be a little bit more bubbly. So I would turn it up a little bit, the heat a little bit higher, just to get that kind of, those chickpeas moving. And I'll show you mine It's nice and bubbly, and there's quite a lot of oil here, and it's all lovely and red, dark red from the tomato paste and the paprika. So carry on doing that, with the intention of getting those chickpeas to become nice and crisp. So I've got this parsley is chopped, and I'm putting it in this bowl here. So it's got chopped parsley, and I'm also going to grate some lemon zest. So that's going to go in there as well. So I don't know, you want about, I can't remember exactly, but you want to get like a teaspoon or so of lemon zest in there for that freshness. Because what you got here is this is quite kind of deep in flavor. You know, the chickpeas and the tomato paste and the spices, they cook and give you that depth. We want something to freshen it up with at the end. So this is what it is. I'm adding my capers as well. So far I've got chopped parsley in here, grated lemon zest and capers. And now I've got these green olives. I'm just going to give them a very, very rough chop. You don't have to chop them, but it's nice to chop them very, very roughly. And like each one into 2 or 3. And so they kind of sit there. And that would be, again, that garnish. So olives chopped up roughly. And I'm going to add those olives to my bowl with the other green things, parsley, capers, lemon zest. So that's all here. Just going to clean this up a bit so it's nice and clean. And then I'm going back to this pan, and I can start to see that the chickpeas are starting to stick to the bottom, and this is going really dark and red. So I'm almost ready to take about half of it for later, but I'll give it another minute. But yeah, let's give it another minute. I'm gonna add a little pinch of salt there, this I'm just giving this green mix a nice stir, so everything is together. It goes together. Now, leaving this aside for a minute, and now I'm going to remove some of my chickpeas. So the chickpeas have been cooking for about 10 minutes or so. I'm going to take about a third out for garnish, nice and bubbly and crispy and beautiful. That's going to be my garnish for later when I finish the dish. I'm keeping that aside. And I'm adding about 2/3 of that green mix in here. So that goes in here. So this is the flavor base for your sauce. Olives, capers, parsley, that's the flavor base for your sauce. And these are the 2 garnishes. So you've got a fresh garnish, which is olives and capers, and a cooked garnish, which is all these fried crispy chickpeas. I'll put those aside. And I'm just going to give those olives and capers like a minute, stirring that through. That's in. And now I'm going to add a couple of other things. I've got cherry tomatoes. They go in now. I've got here. I've got some caraway seeds and a tiny bit of sugar. I'm adding that to the pan as well. So I've got caraway seeds and sugar, and I'm just going to get some heat onto everything here. Get those tomatoes to heat up. So if you look at my pan, you'll see tomatoes and cooked chickpeas, all the green stuff, and that is pure flavor. I can just smell everything. And the last thing I'm going to do now at this stage is add my pasta, the orecchiette. And I'm going to stir that in. And as soon as the pasta is in there, the liquid can go in. So it's mostly stock and a bit of water. You want to know how much you're going to put. So in that respect, you need to follow the recipe because there's just enough liquid to be absorbed by the pasta. So when you normally make cooked pasta and drain it, it doesn't matter so much how much water in the pan. You want a lot of pan to let it cook nicely and evenly, but then you're going to drain it. In this particular recipe, you really need to measure your water, your liquid, your stock in the water. So, because all of it is going to be absorbed into the pasta, and you're going to get a really wonderful texture. I'm going to add some salt now. I think I need to add about a teaspoon. I'm just going to look at my recipe. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt in there. So you're seasoning. So 3/4 of a teaspoon. You're seasoning as well. Give it a good stir, and I'm just waiting for it now to come to the boil. So let's wait a second. I'm going to get everything here ready for later. So this is a good opportunity to tidy up, get everything nice and tidy. And we're just waiting for this to boil. And once that's boiled, I'm going to put the lid on, and we're going to have, it will take about up to 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes for the pasta to cook in the sauce, to absorb those wonderful flavors. And I always like to taste. I'm going to get a spoon. Hold on 1 second. It's the other side of the kitchen. So it's a good time now to taste. And you see, you don't know exactly, but you want to see if it's salty enough. In my case, I think I'm going to add a little bit more salt. And as you can see, well, you can't see, but you'll see if you're cooking along, but you'll see when it starts to simmer, so you can see that it's boiling. I'm going to cover the pot with a lid and take the temperature down. And now I'm just going to get it to simmer slowly, as I said, for 10-15 minutes. And essentially, that's all the cooking that you do. And this is what I love about this recipe. You get a lot of flavor for very little effort, because, you know, as you've seen, I've used tin chickpeas. I chopped up some veggies, but that was the extent of the effort. And this is why I love this recipe so much, because it's perfect for a demonstration like this one, you know, and it's just wonderful to have. And as those of you who are cooking along will see, and the rest of you who are watching this and haven't cooked would hopefully go home or tomorrow make the dish. So yeah. Now I think we're ready for some questions, right? Because we've got time now while this is bubbling away for you to ask the question. So please go ahead and let's have a conversation.
The first thing I have to say is that you make this look really easy and fast doing this on screen. I cook at home a lot, and I don't know if you saw my hands when you said I did the wrong thing, but there was some sheer panic in that moment.
Well, you know what? Yes, but as much as I love to say that I'm super, really good at what I'm doing, in actual fact, I have cooked this recipe quite a few times, and also I've demonstrated it a few times. And whenever I demonstrate a recipe, I try to cook it a couple of times before a demonstration, so I'm fluent with the recipe, that I don't get stuck. And you're talking to someone who cooks quite a bit, so in a way that that's just the way that you really need to make sure that if you're going to demonstrate, you've done it once or twice before to avoid dramas and catastrophes in the kitchen, right?
Well, it smells absolutely wonderful. I can't wait to taste test.
Absolutely. Hopefully they didn't burn it.
Thank you.
So I think we are ready for our first question. And we'll pull them up here on the screen so you can see them as well. And so, Andrea, I'll let you take the first question.
Sure. So this person states they were very intrigued by the ingredients in your book, many of which they have never heard about. Do you have any advice to get people out of their same recipes and into new flavors? Like, how do you make that courageous first step? Because it's a little intimidating, I have to say.
Yeah, no, I see that. So I'm just going to stop for a second. I forgot to put a timer on for my pasta, so I don't want to be. So another important thing is to always make sure you time yourself. So I've just put 12 minutes here, just as a reminder. So, but let me answer the question. So I really sympathize with this question because often, even myself, who is someone who's always drawn to different ingredients, different cuisine, I find myself, wanting to try something new. And, let's say I have never tried to cook Vietnamese food and I get a new Vietnamese cookbook and I go, oh, there's quite a few ingredients here that I don't know and then I have to cook. I think the best thing is to start, well, there's two basic rules that I like to mention. One of them is choose something that you really want to eat, like something that really tempts you. Don't go for something that just looks like a challenge, but you go like, oh, I'm not sure I'm going to like that. Try something you have an idea that you're going to want to eat. So that will make you more excited as you cook. The other is to really try to make sure that you choose a relatively simple recipe to start with and gradually build up. So, there's nothing wrong with a 4 or 5 ingredient recipe. You start to understand the flavors. You start to understand the principles of the cuisine. And don't move. A lot of people think, oh, I've done a couple of recipes, Moroccan recipes. Now let me move to South America. If those are not the places in the world where you come from, don't rush. Try to kind of immerse yourself in the cuisine and understand the dynamics of that particular cuisine. Try to see what works for you. And there's nothing wrong with cooking a recipe a few times. I'm a firm believer in repetition. It's really good to cook a recipe a few times. So I would say cook a recipe once, twice, 3 times. Get really well acquainted with it and get that confidence. Don't move on to the next recipe.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. That'll definitely help us get out of our comfort zones. And I think this is kind of along the same vein of questions. So what we would like to know is that chickpeas were a substitute for the meat in this dish. And I think a lot of the students that are cooking alongside this are not used to having meat or not having meat in their meals and having a substitute. So this question is, why did you choose chickpeas over any other protein in this dish?
So I love chickpeas, not as a substitute for anything. I just love chickpeas as they are. I know many people who are eating vegetarian or vegan diets tend to go for chickpeas as a substitute for protein like meat or fish. But I think they're just great by themselves. And to that extent, I always see we've got I know that you can see those shelves behind me. They're full of different ingredients. I've got dried chickpeas. But we also have other legumes like mung beans or black-eyed peas or different beans. All those could work really well in this recipe if you want to not use chickpeas. I mean, this recipe would work absolutely fine if you use white beans of some kind of description. That's all good. If you do want to make this dish meaty, that's also fine. So those chickpeas here. I could easily imagine this dish cooked, for example, with tuna, even tinned tuna, like really good tuna. I wouldn't have it sitting there so long with pasta. I would have it a little bit later. Delicious. Tuna or anchovies or both would be really, really nice for this dish if you want to replace the chickpeas or add to the chickpeas. I could see some kind of way in which you can introduce chicken here. If you were to grill it, I give it a bit of color and then add it to cook in the pasta. So they're really, what I love about this is that it's so flexible. It really is flexible. The flavors are there, the spices are there. And what I have to do is layer flavors. So, when you think of complex dishes, it's all about layering flavors. So, what the layers of flavor that we've got here is acidity, for example, that comes from the olives, but it also comes from the caper, it comes from the lemon zest, which reminds you of the acidity of the lemon, and then you've got the tomato it's really nice to have a few sources of a certain flavor of acidity. In this case, you've got the fat coming from olive oil, but also from olives. So it's that kind of layering that's important. The particular ingredients can really change it. If people feel confident once they've cooked something once or twice, I think they should really experiment with layering flavors in the way that I described. The other thing that I want to say about this recipe is that I do something here that you'll find in many of my recipes, and I really recommend people to play around with this notion. Is when I cooked the chickpeas and kept some for later, and then when I made the green salsa and put some in and kept the rest for later, essentially you're kind of getting a bonus here, right? Because what are you getting? You're getting the same effort, the same process that you created actually works for you twice. Once in depth, and the other time with freshness and crunch, which is the garnish. And so you get, and it's a really good thing to remember. Let's say you saute onion, or onion and chilies, or onion and spices, or onion and garlic, and just about to start something bigger, you start a stew or you start a soup. Consider taking some of that sauteed onion with whatever it is that it's cooking with, and putting it in a little bowl, saving it till the end, and spooning that on top. Let's say you can spoon it by itself, you can add herbs to it. You essentially reminded the person who eats the dish that there's onions in there, but you can't see them anymore, by putting that on top. So it's a lovely garnish. It has a slightly different texture, but it also adds to the richness of the experience. So this dish is a really good illustration of that technique. It's a really great technique to cook something or to keep something and add it to a different flavor.
All right, excellent. I love the idea of the layered flavors. That's great. So somebody wanted to know, what type of knife are you using to chop the parsley?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Let me just wash it so that's when I show it to you. So that's another thing that I think we should allow ourselves quite a lot of convenience. So as I said, people are very stuck up on particular ingredients and say, oh, you have to have that ingredient for that dish to work. I always say, yeah, but often enough you can actually change and play and be a little bit more creative. And the same for me applies to kitchen tools. So some people say, oh, every chef needs a good chef knife and they have to be on that side. And I quite like this knife, which is like a Japanese cleaver. For me, it's really good for the size of my kettle. For me, I love the control that I've got. It's not too big, it's not too small. And I use it for most kitchen jobs. So I would use that to chop for general chopping, like I did with the parsley. I'd also use that to cut a tomato, or I would use that to slice, let's say, peel a lemon or another citrus. It's a really nice sharp Japanese knife. It's the top quality, and I think I've had this knife. I don't have a knife fetish, so I don't have a special, relationship with knives. But I've had this knife for a good 5 or 7 years, and I just look after it pretty well. But it sits there and it does everything. So I really recommend this one. But if you do like other knives, obviously, absolutely fine.
Excellent, thank you.
While I'm doing this, I'm actually peeling this lemon just to illustrate how lovely this knife is. But also, I'm going to take this lemon once it's peeled, and it's not in the recipe, but I'm going to chop it up and add it as another garnish. I love chopping up lemon and adding it on top. You don't have to do it. It will make the dish a little bit more acidic and fresher, but I love doing that. So take that as an option for this particular dish as well.
So, Mr. Ottolenghi, one of our viewers wants to know, while you're chopping up your parsley, are you supposed to chop up the stems as well?
With the parsley?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's up to you. I mean, there's a lot of flavor in the stems, but sometimes they're quite hard and woody. The parsley that I had it was quite, it was a mix. So, for instance, for this recipe, I wouldn't use these thick stems. Those I would keep for stocks, or if I would make a paste in a food processor, I might use those. But for this, if you chop it by hand, you won't be able to make them small enough. So I just use these stems, the ones from the top of the bunch, and they're nice and soft. And if you chop fine enough, it's absolutely great. But it's really good to try not to waste. That we're becoming more and more aware and conscious of not wasting, and I think that applies to herbs. You can really use a whole herb. There's really no need to get rid of anything in your kitchen. Take whatever parsley stems you haven't used, blitz them up, and fry and freeze them and have them as a base or stalks, or if you blitz them up, then you can use it straight away as kind of a paste for whatever it is, for pasta or for anything else you're going to want this parsley food.
So Chef Ottolenghi, I wanted to ask, we are at about 5,000 feet. So how do we adjust for that? Is there any recommendations that you might have?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. At 5,000 what?
We're at 5,000 feet, our altitude. So should we be doing anything to compensate for that altitude where we're at here in Pueblo, Colorado?
Oh my goodness, you've caught me out. I don't know the answer to that. I've always lived at sea level. So, maybe you can tell me. Or the
okay, well, we'll work on that and get back.
Okay. No, I don't think it would make a huge difference in this particular recipe. We're not boiling huge amount of water. It's very controlled cooking. There's a small amount of liquid. You just follow your instincts, and and when you see that the thing is, boiling, you take the heat, crank the heat down. And luckily, I've got a see-through lid here, so it's a glass lid, so I can actually see what's going on inside the pan, and I can see that there's still quite a lot of liquid that hasn't been absorbed, and we're past 12 minutes. I'm going to give it another 2 minutes or so, and then for those liquids to be absorbed into the pasta, and then I'll test it. I'll check it, and we can handle it.
All right. So I have to ask you this question.
Go ahead.
The one pan orecchietti puttanesca. In the book, it talks about this is a famous pasta sauce from Naples in the style of the prostitute. Would you please explain?
Well, Italians love being very, colorful in their language. So I don't know the history of that particular dish. I'm sure it's got some kind of explanation what gave the pasta that is based on capers and olive and the name puttanesca. But what I love about Italian cooking is that it's so passionate and it's so deeply rooted in the culture that there is always a story. I don't know the particular story, but I just love the name, and that's inspired by it. Although there's a lot of things here that are not part of the typical recipe. The method is a little bit unusual. We've added spices that I wouldn't expect to be in a puttanesca, like cumin, like caraway. Those are kind of North African spices for me. And in North African cooking often you have the addition of those particular flavors to tomato-based sauces, which I love, whether you're cooking for couscous or you're cooking fish or you're cooking meat. There's often good spice going with these sauces. So that's what's done here. So this is kind of a hybrid mix between Italian cooking and North African cooking, and we're kind of having a good little play with those cuisines and those cultures in this dish. I'm just going to stop here, and I'm just going to take off the lid and just see where we are at. And I'm just loving what I'm smelling here and what I'm seeing. So I'm looking, and there's quite a lot of liquid there. I would just increase I'm going to also check the pasta. Yeah, this is lovely. So my pasta is al dente. It's nice and cooked. I would say I'm going to lift the pan so you can actually see. And I might disappear for a second, but I just want to bring it close to the camera. So, if you can look into my pan now, you'll see there's, I'm not going to tilt it too much so it doesn't come out, but you can see that there's quite a lot of pasta is nice and cooked. There's nice sauce, actually. I'll move the camera down. Here we go, that's better. So if I'll take the spoon, and so you see there's quite a lot of sauce here, which I absolutely love. It's nice and soft and liquidy and delicious. If you want to get rid of some of that, you could obviously put it on the heat for a good 3 minutes and all of that will evaporate. But I like this pasta that it's almost like a slightly brothy there, but you can you can reduce all that very easily. And now that I've got my camera in this particular position where you can see my pan really well, I'm going to do the finishing, the garnishing. So you're not going to see me, just my hands. So I've got here those lovely chickpeas that are fried, and now they've cooled down. They've crispened up a bit, not too much, but they're just lovely on top to look at, and they're little surprises that you get when you eat. So I'm going to spread those on top, and then I'm going to use this green mix of olives, capers, lemon, and parsley, and just spoon that on top as well. That's all that wonderful freshness, and I love this. You know, it's just so wonderful. I'll move it a bit to the angle so you can see it a bit better. Here we go. Can you see it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is beautiful, so colorful. And that's what I loved about this book, and how you make your dishes look so beautiful as well. The color is amazing.
Thank you. So I'm going to lift this up again and come back to my position, and we can keep chatting. There we go. So this is practically ready now, and as you've seen, and I've got some of my chopped lemon here that I just wanted to illustrate the knife. So I chopped some lemon, and I'm going to take some of this and spoon that on top. That would be a really nice topping. It would be sharp. It's chopped up fine, or kind of diced fine. But those little bursts of lemon would be absolutely delicious. And then we didn't waste lemon zest. You can use to squeeze out the lemon juice as well. Yeah. So this is kind of it, and how wonderful it is to create those layers, and you can cook something from tin chickpeas, which are cheap and easy to get, from a couple of spices. The pasta that is dry and also inexpensive. It's a really easy, quick, cheap dish that really tastes like $1 million because it's got all those wonderful flavors that I mentioned, layers together. So I urge you guys to try as well, and whoever's watching and not cooking would have to salivate but not enjoy this. I'm really enjoying this. Where are you guys in the cooking?
We're sampling.
Oh, you're sampling. Good.
Can you see our dish we've made? We'll show it on our camera.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, it looks good. I can't see it very well, but it looks. Did the pasta cook properly? It looks like you've got much less liquid than I did. Did you have a lot of stock there?
I'm wondering if it's because we're in a drier climate.
That might be an excuse, Chef. I don't know.
How much? So I had a big jug of stock, and You added stock.
We added about 8 ounces.
8 ounces. Oh, that's quite a lot less than what I did.
Okay. Well, we cut the recipe in half since it's just Andrea and I. We're waiting for the holidays to add on our weight.
So yeah, I think
good.
the liquid level needs to be. You need to have like a nice saucy thing to cook all that pasta. Yeah. This is nice. I don't want
And
to
the other
stop
thing, excuse me, I wanted to point out is I would know chickpeas as garbanzo beans. Are they the same? They look the same.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they're totally the same.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's the dry variety that you. That's the dry variety that you soak overnight and then cook, and then you can get them from a tin, a can, and those are just being cooked and put in liquid, and that liquid, the aquafaba, what we call, is often a vegan substitute to egg white. So the liquid in which the chickpeas are sitting in a can could be whipped up into a meringue, just like egg whites, which is a really cool thing to do. So the water that I've used, that I've had in that can, could actually be used as a substitute to egg whites in many recipes. So I encourage you to go look up the recipe. It's not as easy to whip up as egg white, but it's pretty cool when it works. It's amazing. So you get a meringue. It's still vegan. It's just used to be water with all the protein.
Yeah. So, Mr. Ottolenghi, we had a question earlier. I just talked about what a prolific cookbook author you are. And, one of the questions was, how do you come up with so many recipes so quickly to put out so many cookbooks? It seems like as I was going through your bio, we had quite a few cookbooks to talk about. So I want to know kind of your source for your genius, really.
So in a way, I'm glad you asked this question because I haven't yet mentioned Isa Belford, who's my collaborator on this book, and she's an incredible young chef who's had spent time in her life in Brazil and Mexico and Italy, and her cooking is really, really influenced by those parts of the world, which are different from the parts of the world where I spent most of my childhood, which is in the Middle East. And all of my books are collaborations. I haven't for quite a few years since French War written a book that is not a collaboration with other cooks. And I just find that a really incredible way to work. It's a source of inspiration to me. So where I'm at now is my test kitchen, and if I'd shown you the whole space, it's quite big. There's quite a lot of working stations, and there's people working here, normally 2 or 3 people cooking every weekday. And that becomes a really fun process because in a way, all those people, each one brings their own perspective. So it's not about me and my cooking, it's about everybody's contributions. And it's so much fun. So I wouldn't be able to come up with so many books in such a short time if I was to do it on my own. But I've always celebrated the people who collaborate with me. And it's a really, really, really great thing to have. So Isa will mention collaborating with the flavor. This is the same book, but this is just the British cover. So it's like cover. And I've got a new book out called that's just come out, Shelf Love, from the Ottolenghi Test Kitchen. You can see it there, and that's literally come out in North America just this week. And this is a collaboration with Nora Murad, which is another member of the Test Kitchen. She's an incredible cook, and she's from a different background altogether for me. And this makes, I think this is where this inspiration comes from. Definitely.
I love how you, in this dish, were able to cook the pasta right in the dish. I love that. But what tips do you have in general on how people can improve their pasta making skills?
So, I mean, I'll ask the question back to you. I mean, in a sense, when you say pasta making skills, the question is whether you talk about dried pasta, which comes drive, it's the stuff you buy in a shop, or homemade pasta, which is a completely different thing. So I would say, I'll give you two answers. First of all, for homemade pasta, these varieties of homemade pasta, it's a really, really lovely labor of love, I would call it, to make homemade pasta. It's a project. It's not something you do on a weeknight when you come back home from work. It's you need to make the pasta dough, and then you need to flatten it out. If you don't have a pasta roller, pasta making machine, then by hand, it's quite a lot of work, but it's great fun. But I would call that a weekend project. And then you get a good recipe and get one of those pasta machines. They're not extremely expensive, and learn how to do that and cook it. It's a whole wonderful experience. When you talk about dry pasta, I think and I find that really, really useful in my life. So there's so many ways to cook it. So we I think we go on autopilot, right? We go like, okay, I'll put the water on, and I'll put a sauce on. We always come with tomato-based sauce, I guess, creamy sauce, and this comes off the heat, and we mix it together. We grate some cheese on top of the pasta, which is lovely and it's wonderful. But there's so many other ways to work with pasta. So I've shown you one way here, which is essentially pasta goes in the sauce and cooked in it, and gives it a particular creamy, wonderful texture. Another thing that I often do is like I've had which is a similar thing. During lockdown, I have two young kids, and they love, like every child, they love pasta, they love chicken. So I've invented this recipe that actually is both love, where you add some chicken thighs in a pan with tomato paste, with thyme, and with onion, and you make it really, really nice pan-grilled chicken. And then I add some water and some spaghetti that I break, and I cook it so the dry spaghetti goes in with the chicken and the stock and the water. You don't even need to use stock because there's chicken bones in there, there's thyme, there's all this flavor, so the stock kind of makes itself. And what happens is that when you put the lid on, there's enough liquid there for the pasta to cook, but once it's cooked, it starts to stick to the bottom of the pan, but it's a very oily base, so it goes really crispy on the bottom where it sticks to the pan. And my kids love that. They love the bits that stuck to the bottom because they're nice and crispy, but they get chicken and pasta and vegetables in there. And again, like this dish, it's all made in one pan. So I really recommend people to really play with pasta. It's the easiest, cheapest, most forgiving ingredient, and yeah, just play around.
So this is kind of an emotional one for our town because it's one of our pride and joys that we have. And so our town is called Pueblo, and we are famous for our Pueblo chilies, which are the Mirasol chilies. We first want to know if you've ever incorporated Mexican flavors into your recipes.
Sorry, you have to repeat the question because I couldn't hear you. You're famous for chili, but I didn't get the rest of the question.
Yeah, we're famous for a chili called the Pueblo chili. It's the Mirasol chili. We wanted to know if you'd ever tried one, and also wanted to know if you have ever incorporated Mexican food flavors into your recipes.
Yeah, so I don't know this chili. I'm not sure I heard it, but I'm looking for that. So in flavor, because I've worked with Lisa, she has Mexican background. I've managed to even make tamales. There's tacos here. Yes, I have. I wouldn't say I call myself a Mexican expert. I haven't even all my sins even been to Mexico, but I've managed to cook some Mexican dishes through Easter for other people that are experts in or know a thing or two about Mexican cooking. And I find it very, very exciting and I'd love to know more and learn more about it. It's a wonderful way of cooking, and it's not the fresh. And in some ways, Mexican cooking really reminds me of Middle Eastern cooking in so many ways. In the use of chilies and chili paste, like we have in North Africa, harissa paste and the spice mixes, cumin, and the use of tomatoes. It's a very lime in Mexico, lemons in the Middle East. There's a lot of parallels, but it's still very distinctively different. That's exciting.
Yeah. So we'll be sending you a bushel of Pueblo chilies here soon. So just look out for that, and we want to see it in your next cookbook. Well, we have many students cooking along with us today. So
Thank
what
you
advice
so much.
would you give young people interested in becoming a chef?
Oh, well, listen, I think getting into cooking or the world of food, whether you are a chef or you're front of house person who, a waiter, server, is a really one of the most wonderful jobs you can have. It's really hard. Normally long hours, not the most social hours. You often work on weekends and on in the evenings. But it's a wonderful, industry to be in the sense that you work with great ingredients if you're lucky. You are surrounded by friends, 24 hours or however much you work. It's a wonderful thing to do, and you can really evolve and learn. So people think, for me, as someone who started doing certain things, and I spent much of my time in the professional kitchen working as a pastry chef, and then when I opened my own cafes, I started getting involved in savory food as well, and now I like cookbooks. There's a lot of rooms for sub careers and different things, especially now with social media. There's so much you can do, and everybody loves to eat. So if you're a good cook, it will make you super popular.
That is true.
With your friends and family. So it's just a wonderful thing, and I really recommend to work for people who just start off as chefs or cooks to work in establishments that treat them well, that they feel appreciated. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be easy because it's hard at the beginning, but work somewhere where you really love the atmosphere and you treat kindly, because there was this, historically a lot of kitchens were not like that, but there's a lot of restaurants that do this, and you can choose. And I think it's easier to choose now because there's such demands for cooks all over the world. Then go for a great place that you enjoy the atmosphere and treats you well. I think it's really important to start somewhere like that, not somewhere where you treat it badly, and that just paints the whole experience, and people are telling you don't want to go there.
So the first question that I'd like to ask you, that actually comes from one of the East High School ProStar students, is what is the difference between ground anise and star anise?
Ground anise. So anise star anise is a spice that is shaped like a star. It's a really lovely spice to look at. It's one of the most beautiful spices. Probably the most beautiful spice. And when you put it in a food processor or a spice grinder, you get the powder. It's ground, and that's a really lovely sweet. It's got a really lovely sweet aniseed flavor, quite mild, and that's good for we make sweets. You can make custards with it. You can throw star anise also into savory cooking, curries, etc. But you can be a little bit careful because it's very sweet. Aniseed is a different spice, and those are tiny little seeds, a bit like fennel seeds. They are whole. You can use them whole and crush them in. You can grind them into a powder, and again use them in all kinds of dishes. They're really nice with things like fennel, which is also aniseedy. Different types of Italian sauces. Like I like to mix aniseed flavor with fennel and ricotta. There's a whole bunch of different things. So yeah, in short, that's aniseed and star anise.
Alrighty, so what made you decide to go with plant-based recipes in this book?
So I've always been a fan of vegetables. When I say vegetables, I mean all plants. Like the rice to wheat to cauliflower to chickpeas, and all those for me are vegetables. It's just a short term. And I grew up in the Middle East, and much of our food was not necessarily meat-based. And I just think there's so much potential. There's so much to do with vegetables, and I've always thought that. I've published before this book, before Flavor, I published Plenty and Plenty More, which are also books that were focusing on vegetables. Each one with slightly different perspectives. So, Plenty was my first vegetable-focused cookbook, and that one was all about kind of families of vegetables, the brassicas, so the cabbages and cauliflowers and tomato family and onions, etc. And the second book, Plenty More, was much more about cooking techniques. So how much the technique affects the results. So if you take a cauliflower and you grate it, you get something a little bit like so powder wheat. That's raw, or you can steam it, or you can roast it, or fry it. And you get really different results. So Plenty More was about that. And this book, Flavor, is about how to really elevate your vegetable. So Lisa Belfridge, who's my co-author on the book, and I have identified 3 general ways in which you elevate the flavor of vegetables to make vegetable dishes really delicious. And there's 3 P's: process, produce, and pairing. And through these 3 perspectives, we attack the vegetable and say, okay, what is it? How do you pair it with something to make it really delicious? So you can pair it with acidity, you can pair it with heat. And then we talk about particular processing, like grilling, like charring, like steaming. Those are processes that happen, etc. So I just love vegetables, and I just think they've got so much potential, and there's so much in this world. And when I cook with vegetables, and I've got the whole pantry, all the options there, I find that I don't even miss meat at all, although I'm not a vegetarian.
So I have to put you on the spot. What's your favorite vegetable?
Okay, so that really changes quite a lot. And I used to be with eggplants, and I still love eggplants. It's still one of my favorite vegetables. But recently, I've fell in love with other vegetables that I cook a lot with. So cauliflower, I think, is probably the most versatile vegetable. And then I would say celery root. It's a wonderful vegetable, and we have quite a few recipes in this book in Flavor that use celery root. I think it's underused. If you cook the whole celery root for a couple of hours, it really transforms. It becomes all wonderful and caramelized and brown, and all the liquid, or much of the liquid, evaporates, and it's a wonderful thing. And you can make like things that look like steak out of it, and so at the moment I'm really obsessed with celery root. But I think it's just the list is endless.
I think as we cooked alongside the East High School Culinary Arts program, a lot of the kids in our town, this really expanded their palates. And one of the questions that we had is about polenta, because I think this was the first time that any of our students ever cooked with polenta. And the question is, why would you use polenta? But I don't think that I want to ask you that question. I kind of want to ask it more along the lines of, polenta is pretty versatile. What are some of the fun ways that you could use polenta in a dish just to make it spiced up a little bit?
Yeah, so I like this question. My father, he passed away a few years ago, and he was of Italian origin, and he used to cook a lot with polenta. And I used to remember watching him make polenta when I was growing up, and he would sit quite a long time over the pot and stir it. For people who don't know, polenta is made out of corn. It's a kind of a cornmeal, and you cook it for quite a while with stock, and then you can add cheese to it, or butter, or olive oil, or all of the above, and it becomes into this deliciously sloppy mess. Looks a bit like oatmeal, but it's really, really, really delicious, and it's nice and sweet. The advantage of today, you can find the traditional polenta, but you can also find a quick cook polenta, which really cooks in 5 minutes. So you save yourself a lot of that, elbow work by stirring the pot for a very long time. And then the options are endless. I would look at it a bit like pasta. Any sauce that you can have on your pasta, you can put on your polenta. And how you want to serve your polenta is up to you. So if you add more liquid, you can serve it as like a porridge, an oatmeal, and then you have like a ragu on top. Even the sauce that I made just here now with the chickpeas can go over polenta, would be delicious. But you can also add a little bit less liquid, and then you can set it. So you spread it out on a wood board or a big batter, and it sets.
and then you can put things on it and put it on the grill with some cheese, and then the cheese melts. You've got a sauce, a cheese, and a polenta base, and then you cut it into square or wedges, and that's a really, really great way to cook. You can use tomato-based sauce. You could do mushrooms. You can use zucchinis and eggplants. I mean, there's really endless options. Anything that will go on tomatoes on pasta will work with polenta as a general rule.
That's a great point.
In the American West, we're probably more used to grits.
Yeah, it's very similar to grits. I mean, polenta and grits are different names to something quite similar. I mean, it's all about the processing of the corn. So each brand is slightly different. And again, the time will vary from one way of preparing it to the next. But yeah, it's very similar to grits. I tried grits when I was in the States, and I thought, oh, that's very, very, very much like the polenta I grew up on. It's not that different, but but the flavoring is very different.
Well, I think this is a question from one of our students, and it is, what is the best way to know when eggs are ready in the oven?
What is ready in the oven?
Eggs.
Eggs ready in the oven. So I'm just not sure about what eggs they mean. So let's say you make like eggs that are cooked in sauce, I guess, like a shakshuka or braised eggs. So that all depends on what you mean by ready, because people have different ideas of what makes an egg ready. So some people don't like the egg yolk to be runny. I love my egg yolks to be runny. So if I put a tray in the oven and I've got a sauce, and it's a tomato-based sauce, or maybe it's a green, sometimes I make a green shakshuka with leeks and spinach and spring onion, scallions and cilantro and parsley, all cooked together to a really beautiful green mess. And I break eggs in them, and I add some stalks because it's a bit dry, and I add some stock, and then I poach my egg in this liquid. The best indication to get it to the level that I want is to take it out, and when the egg whites turn white rather than translucent, it means they're cooked. And as soon as they're cooked, the egg yolks will still be running, which is how I like them. But if you want your egg yolks to be fully cooked, then you just from the time that the egg white set, and that's visual, you can see that the egg white set, give it another 5 minutes, and then the egg yolks will set as well, and then you have to cook through.
Okay.
Good. It's an art, not a science, right? Cooking.
Yeah, I mean, it is a science. It's definitely a science. There's people that know, to give the scientific answers. That's just not me. But I think that I prod the things quite often, even when I cook meat. I'm not the kind of person that can touch a steak and know necessarily when it's done. I have a thermometer for that, and that's very useful. With eggs, just put the knife in there and just check very, very quickly if it's cooked to your level of cooking, and then you're okay.
Thank you.
So we have a few more questions for you, Mr. Ottolenghi. And the first one that came in, it was, do you have any tips for scaling up recipes for larger crowds?
Yeah. So this is a really good question. There's even books been written about this, cooking for a crowd. I think there is certain things that are will work, and those are the ones you want to pursue. And there's things that don't work. So for instance, if I'm thinking about it, if you are cooking for a crowd and you're making something which is like a stew, right? You can follow the recipe, and then just normally the things that are very flavorsome, like the aromatics, the flavor givers, salt and spices. If it has sugar, then sugar. All the stuff that has a lot of flavor, I will hold some back. Because when you scale up a recipe, you don't necessarily need to add all that flavor in, because that it has the impact is quite noticeable with a smaller amount as it is with a larger amount. So I would hold some liquid back, because often you don't need as much. That if you cook something in a small pan and in a big pan, you get more evaporation from a big pan. So you will. It all actually depends on the proportion of the pans, but hold some of that liquid back and add it in stages. Same with the other big flavor givers. Don't just, triple or quadruple the recipe. Just, the basis of the recipe, let's say it's a protein like beef or meat or any kind of meat, or if it's a vegetable, multiply those as you wish, but with the flavors and with the liquids, just add it in stages. And this is how you can evaluate whether you need to do the whole amount or just a bit less than the whole amount, or sometimes you add extras.
Okay, so what is your favorite quick dish, and do you like to cook to music? And what kind of music?
I do like to cook to music, but I also love cooking to podcasts. So I'm so busy and I never get time to learn new things, or I don't read enough books. So I often listen to podcasts, food podcasts, or general podcasts when I cook. And what the dish that I like cooking a lot at home for my children is called majadra. It's a Palestinian and more general in the Middle East. Other cultures cook it as well. It's got the three main ingredients are lentils, fried onion, and rice. But the rice could also be bulgur wheat, or sometimes even some types of pasta are being used. And it's a very simple dish. Some people could cook the rice and the lentils in one pot. Some people cook them separately and then mix them up. You can choose whatever suits you. But the most important, and then there's spices. So often there's cumin, there's turmeric, there's allspice, sometimes some garlic. But the most important thing is the fried onion. So every platter of those rice with lentils would have quite a lot of fried onion in them and on top. So you fry your onion until it's nice and cooked and caramelized and sweet. And then you leave some to drop on top, which looks great. And then you mix them in, and that kind of gets softer through the steam of the rice. And that is one of my favorite dishes. And I serve it to my children with a bowl of yogurt, spoon on top, just some to give it a little bit of freshness. And it's a wonderful thing.
Sounds good.
Sounds delicious, yes. So for our last question, this isn't food-based, but our audience is in love with your kitchen. So we've gotten multiple questions about this, so I'm going to combine them into two, okay?
Okay, yeah, go for it.
So the first one is that we had a mom who was cooking alongside with her 9-year-old daughter. I don't know if it's daughter or son, so I hope I didn't offend anybody, and would like to know how you picked the colors for your kitchen and how you overall designed your beautiful kitchen that we see in the shop.
Okay, so for the shops that we have we have restaurants and shops in London, and for that we have a good friend of mine, and he's an architect and designer. He's called Alex Meitlis, and he's an incredible creative person, and he's in charge of the overall look of our public-facing restaurants. Over here in the test kitchen, we worked with a designer called Nina. She's also a wonderful creative designer, and she showed these color options to me and to the team, and we all love that kind of cream color. It's very, it's for me, it's very good with food. It's too stark. There's almost like foodie colors. You can see foods have those kind of colors, so it made total sense to use those kind of colors. They're also very organic and sustainable. They're not like they are. They've got very good credentials. So we love the idea that the kitchen looks good and uses really usable materials. Yeah, I'm very happy with it. I'm glad people noticed, because it's a new test kitchen. We've only been here for a few months.
It's a beautiful space, and thank you for bringing us into it today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
And that wraps up our portion question, Mr. Ottolenghi. Is there anything else that you would like to say to our audience?
No, just I wanted to say thank you. I want to encourage everyone to cook at home with whatever cookbooks you have. It's just such a wonderful thing to do. It's for me, during the multiple lockdowns we've had over the last couple of years. Cooking has been such a wonderful pastime. It's practical because you feed yourself and your family, but it's also a good way to kind of distraction from the troubles of the day to day. And yeah, just carry on cooking and enjoy it and eat and just have a great time.
Great.
Great advice.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for a lovely conversation. And yeah, until next time.
And have a great evening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much, Mr. Ottolenghi. Our community has enjoyed your literature throughout this time. All of Mr. Ottolenghi's cookbooks are part of the Pueblo City County Library District's collection. If you love today's recipe, be sure to check out Yotam Ottolenghi's cookbooks. We have several programs that feature Mr. Ottolenghi's recipes, so be sure to check out PCCLD's Facebook and YouTube channel for additional cooking demonstrations.
We want to extend a huge thank you to East High School and Miss Pass's Culinary Arts class. We've enjoyed cooking in your kitchen today. This concludes the 2021 All Pueblo Reads Public Author Presentation. We look forward to seeing you all at the 2022 Book Lovers Ball. Thank you for joining us.
Have a great afternoon and enjoy the delicious meal you just created. Thank you. Well, Mr. Ottolenghi, thank you so much for joining us this morning and cooking brunch with us. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to talk to you.
During the past month, we've celebrated culture, community, family, history, food, agriculture, and more. And thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you joining us today for our cooking demonstration and for inspiring our entire community to create meals together as we learned with Mr. Yotam Ottolenghi.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun, and I learned something new, but I'm not a very good cook, which anyone can attest to. Ask my sons, ask my husband, but now I've really sprung it on them with this very fancy dish that's quite easy to make.
Absolutely. I mean, I had a panic moment and we had somewhat of the recipes in place, but it still turned out delicious, right?
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. Check it out. It's Book Lovers Ball. This is what it's all about. All Pueblo reads. What a great program you all have.
Thank you.
This is awesome for you to do.
So if you enjoyed this program and want to hear more from Chef Ottolenghi, we will be live tomorrow at 11 p.m. on our Facebook and YouTube channels. All of Mr. Ottolenghi's cookbooks are part of the All Pueblo Reads and Pueblo City County Library District's collection. If you love today's recipe, please be sure to check out all of Yotam Ottolenghi's cookbooks. We have several programs that feature Mr. Ottolenghi's recipes, so be sure to check out PCCLD's Facebook and YouTube channels for additional cooking demonstrations.
We want to extend a huge thank you to East High School, Go Eagles, and Miss Pat's Culinary Arts class. We've enjoyed cooking in your kitchen today, and this concludes the Book Lovers Brunch. We look forward to seeing you all in the 2022 Book Lovers Ball. Thank you for joining us.
Have a great afternoon and enjoy the delicious meal that you just created.